behalf of the more than 55,000 farm and rural family members of the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau, I cannot tell you how proud we are to be a diamond sponsor of today's agricultural display. This display really demonstrates the truth about modern farming to thousands of non-ag farm show visitors. This is the exact reason that in 2010, an alliance of a wide range of prominent farmer and rancher-led organizations and agricultural partners came together to collaborate at national, regional, and state levels to answer Americans' questions about how we raise our food while being stewards of our environment and responsibly caring for our animals. This was the start of the United States Farmers and Ranchers Alliance. Today, we're fortunate to have joining us the chairman of the board of directors of the United States Farmers and Ranchers Alliance, Bob Stallman. Bob is a rice and cattle producer from Columbus, Texas. Mr. Stallman is also the president of the nation's largest and most influential general farming organizations. Bob, welcome to Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Carl. Good morning, y'all. That's a traditional Texas greeting, by the way. Carl asked me, I don't know, several months ago about coming to this event, and when he explained what it was, I said, yeah. I said, this fits in with exactly the things that we're working on now very diligently with consumers to build consumer trust. And besides that, I didn't have to fly anywhere. I could drive up from Washington. Now, the only thing is, what's that white stuff on the side of the road when I was coming up? I had to stop and look at it. I wasn't quite sure. I think it's snow, right? It is a great pleasure to join you, and I congratulate you on this exhibit and this effort. I was very pleased to be able to have a sneak preview. I got a chance to walk through a little while ago and looked at all the displays in there. And short of bringing a consumer to the farm, this is about the best way, I think, to explain some of the things we do with modern production agriculture. So it's a real pleasure to be here and to see this effort in person, and I certainly wish you well with the results. I understand that last year was the first year and that you had a pretty impressive showing, and a lot of people came through. Someone told me 200,000 visitors last year, and I've been hearing 400,000 this year. So I hope that those numbers do prove up and that you do have the opportunity to influence and educate that many consumers coming through. You know, the theme that you have for opening the doors, farming, knowledge, and trust, that kind of says it all. And I often point out as president of the American Farm Burean Federation that our farm family-based production system that we have, farming and ranching system that we have in this country, is the best way to provide for the needs, not only of this country, but for a significant part of the rest of the world's population. Now, we've had a bit of a challenge, and I think it's going to be an ongoing challenge. There's been a huge conversation that has developed in this country about food, about what it is, how it's produced. There have been questions raised. And, you know, it's an old cliche to say that it's the old bumper sticker, if you eat, you are involved in agriculture. It's a cliche because it's very true. Everybody is involved in agriculture because they do eat the products that farmers and ranchers grow and raise. But there's still been a growing disconnect. All of us know this that have been involved. Used to be everybody spent the summer at least on grandma and grandpa's farm, or maybe grew up on a farm. These days, consumers in the cities, urban and suburban areas, are 5 and 6 generations removed from ever having any experience about what being on a farm and ranch is all about. So that's created this disconnect, or knowledge gap as we call it. And that also creates a ripe environment for misinformation to occur. And we've seen examples of that, more frequent examples of that, as this conversation about food has been taking place. Carl mentioned that I'm chairman of the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance. The reason the alliance was started was because those of us involved in producer groups, farmer and rancher-led producer groups, realized that we were not doing enough to bridge that knowledge gap, to maintain consumer trust in what we do on our farms and ranches. And I was as guilty of it as anybody. You know, we know in agriculture, if you're a farmer and rancher, you know we take care of the land, the water. You know we take care of the environment and produce safe food in the process. And we take it for granted that everyone else knows that. Well, the reality is that's not the case anymore. Not everyone else knows that. And so we thought just because we were the good guys, we really didn't have to explain ourselves a whole lot. That society was just supposed to accept all these tenets that we knew. But in the interim there, somehow we lost touch with consumers. And so we came to understand that there needed to be an effort to bridge that gap with consumers. I will point out that this is, you know, farmers and ranchers have a little bit of hard time agreeing on things on most days. You know, if you get three of them in a coffee shop, you'll get three different opinions. To get 59 farmer and rancher-led groups together for one effort and to get them to agree on a common goal and to pool their resources, somebody needed to stick a plaque in that hotel the day that happened, because that's a pretty big deal for agriculture. Sometimes it's hard for us to get together. But in getting together, we now have the resources and the program in place we think that can make a big difference. And it ties in so well with what you're doing here with this exhibit. We started out trying to really understand what consumers thought about modern production agriculture, about farming and ranching, what their concerns were, what their questions were. And I'll be honest, we found out things that surprised me at the end of the day. We've been really good in the past about saying, well, let's just get the facts. You know, by gosh, if I tell consumers the facts, that's all we need to do, because that's going to convince them. We found out we were wrong about that. They really weren't interested in facts, even less interested in the science behind those facts, something that we in agriculture have always hung our hat on. And so we knew we had a lot of work to do, and that research helped provide some approaches and some messaging that we've been carrying out. The other issue was, who was the target? It's very difficult to target consumers all across this country. I mean, we have 300+ million people living in this country. But where could we do the most good, and where is most of the social conversation occurring about food? Well, it's with what we call the influentials, the influencers, food editors, you know, TV chefs, or famous chefs in restaurants, mommy bloggers. I did not know what a mommy blogger was until about 6 months ago. And there was one young woman there at a panel that we had. She had 2 small children. She stayed at home. She wrote a blog about food, and to answer questions that young mothers may have about the safety of their food. What's good food? You know, what should I feed my kids? She had 100,000 followers, and that's what she did. And she's very, very capable and very thoughtful young woman. And that got me to thinking about, this is a new world we're living in with social media. It's not like it has been in the past, where mainstream media somehow gets a message out in print or on radio. This social media thing is what's ramped up this conversation about food, so it's very important that we get into that space. So we had to figure out some strategies and some language or some messages to use to tap into that. Let me tell you a little bit about some of the conclusions that we've drawn about how we need to communicate with consumers. And I might add that we've been working with a couple of other entities, the Center for Food Integrity and the International Food Information Council, kind of a 3-way effort to try to figure out really how to deliver the information that consumers want to hear. Well, we know that communicating kind of the way we've done it in the past is good. Maybe not good enough, but it's good. You know, we give them the basics, we explain what we do, and that information is supported by facts, you know, although that's not as important as it used to be for consumers. They want to feel good about what they have. So that's the good way of doing things. Now, there is a better way, and that's storytelling. And this is where part of our Farmers and Ranchers Alliance effort is designed to get farmers and ranchers comfortable with telling their story directly to consumers and these consumer influencers, doing it through social media for the biggest part. And that's taken a change, that's created the necessity for a change in the way we communicate. Because we found out we have to listen a whole lot more than we have to talk to consumers. And when you listen to a consumer, when you listen to the question that they have, and the biggest question they have is this food safe for me and my children? Or is there any long-term health effects from this food? That's the number one question they ask. So we have to listen to the questions and respond very openly, very transparently, and we never apologize for what we do, but we have an honest conversation with what we do and how we do it. This is an example of one way to do that, because here you have examples of production. You have examples of the kind of technology that we have to use in modern farm and ranch production. And it allows them to come and take all this in as a consumer in viewing these exhibits. Let me tell you just a little bit more about some of the research findings in general that we have found in dealing with consumers. We have to be very transparent. You don't pull the wool over anybody's eyes anymore. You have to be upfront and transparent about what you do. I got asked the question, I was on a panel in one of the big events that we had, and I got a question it was a web-based question from someone said, well, why don't you quit using animal antibiotics? Because that's always a touchy subject. Well, I explained that I'm a cow-calf producer, and when I have my breeding heifers that I'm going to put into the herd, when I wean them and bring them into the pens, that yes, I give them antibiotics for a brief period of time, because if I don't, they're going to end up getting sicker than they would otherwise. It protects them. It's just like getting an inoculation, if you will, or if you've had surgery at your doctor, they give you a few antibiotics to keep you from getting an infection. It's the same principle. But consumers don't understand this. And so it's not that we apologize for what we do, but we explain why we do it. And I think that's an important point. It's also important not to use scientific terms. And I used to use a lot of those. I don't do that anymore. Because consumers really don't want to hear the scientific terms. They don't want to hear the detailed statistics and facts. They want to know that their concerns are being acknowledged, that they have the opportunity to voice those concerns, and that they're getting a real response to whatever those concerns are. And as I said, they are primarily interested in health, because young mothers, and I have 2 daughters and 8 grandkids, so I understand how young mothers are. They want to be sure that they don't do anything that has the smallest potential for harm in terms of what they provide their kids in their food. And I understand that. And so there's this doubt created, and that now is up to farmers and ranchers to help address those doubts by explaining what we do, why we do it, and why the food supply is safe. All of you that are in this audience, I suspect all of you, at least most of you, care about the future of farming and ranching in this country. We don't have the luxury of saying, well, somebody else needs to take care of this. Somebody else needs to take care of this, bridging this gap in consumer trust and knowledge that we have. It's going to be up to each of us. The good news is that with the communication means that we have today through social media, anybody can interact with a consumer directly. Any farmer or rancher can do that. Even for an old guy like me, I can get on Facebook. I know how to do that. And so each of us have an opportunity that are involved in agriculture to help bridge that gap. One consumer influencer at a time. And if we're willing to step up and do that, and do it the right way, we'll rebuild that bridge between consumers and farmers and ranchers about trust, and we'll help close that knowledge gap, and our industry will be better for it for the long term. It's been a real pleasure to be here with you today. Once again, my congratulations. It takes a very large collaboration to put an effort on like this, and I'm certainly pleased to be able to see this, see what it entails, and I wish you the best in terms of the number of consumers you're going to have coming through here in the next week as they look at this exhibit. So thank you for having me.